now who won.
Okay.
Drum roll.
Okay.
And the winner is Caitlin Clark.
Clearly we want her out there. I think she draws so much attention and she's a phenomenal player. But at the same time, I think it's a great time for her to learn from the side.
Sophie Cunningham just broke the silence, and Lexy Hull followed with a heartfelt message that no one saw coming. Their announcement about Caitlin Clark isn't just emotional, it's deeply personal and has left fans across the league holding their breath. These three women have formed one of the strongest bonds in the WNBA. But what they've just revealed changes everything. How do we go from triumph to heartbreak in a matter of days? Grab a seat as we reveal the emotional twist that just stunned the Indiana Fever. Caitlin Clark's All-Star exit shocks fans. 17 July 2025 was supposed to be unforgettable for all the right reasons. Indianapolis was glowing with pride, gearing up to host the WNBA All-Star Weekend. Every hotel was booked, every ticket gone within minutes, and every banner across the city carried the same name, Caitlin Clark. The hometown sensation, just 23 years old, had taken the league by storm. Fans weren't just showing up for a game, they were arriving to witness a moment in basketball history. Clark had become a household name long before stepping into the WNBA. Her record-breaking run at Iowa had left college fans in awe. But it was her leap into the pros that confirmed what many already suspected. She was different. Fearless on the court, sharp with the ball, and inspiring with every move. She had quickly become the face of the Indiana Fever. Her rookie season laid the groundwork, but by her second year, she wasn't just catching up to league veterans, she was passing them. That became undeniable in early July, when she was named WNBA Player of the Year at the ESPYs. The announcement sent shockwaves through the league as Clark stood above powerhouses like Breanna Stewart and A'ja Wilson. For someone still so early in her journey, it wasn't just an award, it was a statement. A young star had arrived and her time was now. So when All-Star Weekend drew near, all eyes turned to Indianapolis. In the three-point contest, Clark was the favorite. In the All-Star game, she was captain. The narrative had practically written itself, but just as the stage was set, the story took a sharp, unexpected turn. Only days after lifting one of the sport's highest honors, Caitlin Clark announced her complete withdrawal from All-Star Weekend. No contest, no game, no appearance on the court. The announcement hit like a thunderclap. How could a moment of triumph so quickly collapse into silence? Fans, teammates, and reporters were all left asking the same question. How did everything change so fast? Could something more serious be unfolding behind the scenes? Keep watching to find out what really led to this sudden and shocking decision. The hidden heartache behind Caitlin Clark's sudden exit. It happened quietly during a tough matchup against the Connecticut Sun. Caitlin Clark began moving with less intensity, a wince flashing across her face as she clutched her side. At first it seemed minor, maybe just fatigue, but whispers quickly turned to concern as she limped toward the bench, visibly struggling. It soon became clear she had aggravated a groin injury she'd been carefully managing for weeks. Her coach, Stephanie White, assured the public she'd be evaluated closely, but no one imagined the outcome would be so devastating. Just days earlier, Clark had stood in the national spotlight, named WNBA Player of the Year at the 2025 ESPYs. Court. It was a difficult yet mature decision, one that showed her commitment to the long game, not just her career, but to her team as well. With Clark stepping down from the contest, someone had to step up, and the WNBA didn't need to look far. Lexy Hull, Clark's Fever teammate, was tapped to take her place. Though quieter in the headlines, Hull had been quietly delivering one of her best seasons, particularly from beyond the arc. Her stats spoke for themselves, one of the highest three-point shooting percentages in the league, and coaches knew she was more than capable of rising to the moment. But even as the spotlight shifted toward Hull, she too was battling a private heartbreak. Just days before the announcement, she lost her beloved dog Maggie, who had been with her for 14 years. It wasn't just a pet, it was family. Hull shared the news on social media, posting black and white photos with Maggie and writing a simple, emotional message. "The sweetest Mag's home won't be the same without you," she wrote. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of fans offered condolences, but two replies stood out. One from Caitlin Clark simply saying, "Love you," and another from teammate Sophie Cunningham, who wrote, "No, Lex, I'm sorry." In a world where competition is fierce and pressure never lets up, these small moments revealed a much deeper story, one of true friendship and emotional strength. This wasn't just a basketball team. It was a sisterhood. They celebrated each other's highs, but more importantly, they showed up for the lows. Hull's grief wasn't something she had to carry alone, and that support echoed through every practice, every press conference, and every post. These weren't just teammates, they were lifelines. And so, as Lexy Hull prepared to step into the contest with a heavy heart, and Clark prepared to support from the sidelines instead of leading on the court, fans began to see something more powerful than stats or trophies. They saw the heart. They saw loyalty. They saw what happens when the game pauses, but the bond between players doesn't. And amid injury, loss, and sudden change, was Sophie Cunningham the quiet force holding it all together when no one else could? Stay tuned to find out. The unbreakable bond between Clark, Cunningham, and Hull. Sophie wasn't just known for her grit on defense, or for her ability to get under opponents' skin, though she did both with remarkable skill. What truly set her apart was her fierce loyalty. Earlier in the season, when Caitlin Clark took a rough hit during a game, it wasn't a coach or referees who stepped in first. It was Sophie. She jumped to Clark's defense without hesitation, confronting the situation head-on. That moment earned her a fine from the league, but praise from fans, who saw something deeper, someone who didn't just play with passion, but played with heart. From that point forward, Cunningham wasn't just seen as a teammate. She was viewed as a leader, someone who stood in the gap when it mattered. And it wasn't just Caitlin she showed up for. She was always checking in on Lexy Hull, too, especially in the emotional days following Maggie's passing. Cunningham quietly took on a big sister role, building a shield around the younger players and making sure no one ever felt alone. Whether it was in practice, on the sidelines, or through private texts filled with encouragement, Sophie was a constant. That closeness didn't go unnoticed. Fans picked up on the trio's special chemistry and gave them a nickname, Tres Leches. It was playful, inspired by the popular dessert, but the meaning ran deeper. It symbolized sweetness, strength, and three distinct flavors blending perfectly together: Clark, Cunningham, and Hull. One explosive star, one fearless protector, and one silent warrior. Together they became the emotional core of the Indiana Fever. Sophie embraced the nickname fully. She even wore a custom shirt printed with cartoon versions of the three of them, bright smiles, bold colors, and all. The design went viral almost instantly, and fans started showing up to games wearing their versions. But behind the fun, the shirt was more than a cute tribute. It was proof that what they had wasn't just a professional bond. It was real friendship. Whether celebrating a huge win or navigating heartbreak, these three women had each other's backs. Their connection went beyond drills and game plans. It was built on trust, time, and shared experiences, both on and off the court. But to understand how this powerful trio came to be, we need to take a look at how Sophie and Lexy began their journeys with the Indiana Fever. How Sophie and Lexy found their place beside Caitlin Clark. It wasn't just friendship that united Tres Leches. It was shared battle scars, quiet grit, and the kind of inner fuel that can't be taught. Sophie Cunningham didn't arrive in Indiana looking for a fresh start. She arrived hungry for disruption. After 6 seasons with the Phoenix Mercury, she'd grown used to the rhythm of routine, to walking into a locker room where she already knew how things worked. But the fire that once drove her to dive for loose balls, trade elbows, and shout louder than the crowd had started to dim. She didn't want to be comfortable. She wanted to feel the pressure again. Indiana offered that. A young roster, a city aching for revival, and most importantly, a team unafraid to let leaders lead. So she came in roaring in, sharp-tongued, loud-laughing, and unafraid to throw herself into a new role. Even in college, that was Sophie's signature. Back at Rockbridge High in Missouri, she had bulldozed her way through 4 state championships, turning expectations into stepping stones. Her college career at Mizzou only sharpened that edge. 129 straight starts, over 2,000 points, and a reputation for playing like every possession was personal. The WNBA was never going to be easy, but for Sophie, difficulty was fuel. She wasn't the flashiest, she wasn't the tallest, but she was relentless. That same energy, audacious and fearless, quickly made her the emotional anchor in Indiana, especially as Caitlin Clark's stardom began to explode. But where Sophie was fire, Lexy brought quiet precision. By the time she joined the Indiana Fever in 2022, Lexy Hull had already carved her name into Stanford's legacy with a chisel of focus and tenacity. Drafted 6th overall, a surprise to many who predicted her to go late in the first round. Lexy didn't walk in with fanfare, she walked in with receipts. Her college years were a masterclass in consistency. Pac-12 championships, Final Four appearances, and a national title in 2021 that silenced every doubter. She wasn't the kind of player who needed headlines to prove her worth. She let the scoreboard do it for her. What set Hull apart wasn't just her stats, it was her stamina. Game after game, season after season, she delivered double-doubles, defensive lockdowns, and clutch shooting when it mattered most. Her junior year alone saw her drop 24 against UCLA, 21 on Louisville in the Elite Eight, and a game-saving double-double in the championship match against Arizona. By her senior year, she was a 3-time Pac-12 selection with more than 36 points in a single tournament game. Lexy never needed to talk big. She just showed up and did the work. And that's exactly what she brought to Indiana. At first glance, Sophie and Lexy couldn't have been more different. One was bold and brash, the other was measured and meticulous. But on the court, their chemistry was unmistakable. Both understood what it meant to carry weight without asking for credit. And when Caitlin Clark arrived, a generational talent with the eyes of the world watching, it was these two who formed the backbone behind her spotlight. Sophie protected it, Lexy steadied it. Their bond wasn't forced, it formed in the grind. Post-practice shooting drills, late-night hotel conversations, and the kind of quiet support that only shows itself when no one else is looking. Tres Leches wasn't just a nickname, it was a survival tactic. Each one brought something the others needed. Clark's flair, Cunningham's fire, Hull's focus. Together, they weren't just teammates, they were a force. But what made their connection unshakable? Was it forged not in the spotlight, but in the quiet battles they faced when no one was watching? Keep watching to find out how loyalty and loss forged a fierce bond. It started with small moments, the kind most people never see. Like when Caitlin Clark, fresh off winning one of the biggest honors of her career, learned she would miss the All-Star weekend due to injury. It was supposed to be a milestone, a moment she'd worked toward for years. But instead of celebration, she found herself sidelined, watching the game she loved unfold without her. The disappointment was sharp, but what followed was quietly powerful. While fans flooded social media with well wishes, it was her teammates who made sure she didn't face it alone. Sophie Cunningham had always been the team's emotional compass. Fiery when needed, soft when it mattered. And when Caitlin was struggling, Sophie was right there. She didn't offer rehearsed encouragement or cliches. She just showed up and checked in, cracking jokes, keeping things light but grounded. Her support wasn't loud, but it was constant. A teammate who knew when to speak and when to simply be there. Lexy Hull, meanwhile, was carrying her quiet heartbreak just days before the Fever returned from a grueling road stretch. Lexy lost the dog that had been with her nearly her entire life. It wasn't something that made the sport's headlines, but it was something that cracked her world. That dog had seen her through high school finals, college pressures, and her early days in the league. Its absence left a silence she couldn't shake. But that's where the true strength of this team began to show. Because even as Lexy grieved, she never stopped showing up for the people around her. She offered Caitlin gentle encouragement, small gestures of kindness that cut through the noise. No grand speeches, just the steady presence of someone who knew what it meant to carry pain while still choosing to care for others. What united Sophie, Lexy, and Caitlin wasn't a winning streak or locker room speeches. It was the quiet stuff. The shoulder squeezes before tip-off. The text that said, "I got you." the small acts of care that reminded them they weren't alone. They didn't just wear the same jersey, they shared the same weight and made sure no one had to carry it alone. Fans took notice, not because of stats or highlight reels, but because of how they carried each other through hard days. It wasn't about who scored the most or who got the spotlight. It was about love, real, visible love. In the way Sophie defended her teammates, the way Lexy showed up despite her grief, the way Caitlin found the strength to smile again was because of the people around her. Together, they weren't just playing the game, they were showing everyone what it really means to be a team. How the Indiana Fever built a culture of heart. In the same breath that fans marveled at Caitlin Clark's highlight reels and Lexy Hull's sharp shooting, something quieter but far more powerful was unfolding behind the scenes. Something that doesn't show up in stat sheets but changes everything. Before Sophie Cunningham's arrival, the Indiana Fever were talented, yes, but raw. The foundation was there, but the walls hadn't quite risen. A group of skilled athletes struggled to find not just their rhythm, but their identity. Then came Cunningham, not with fanfare or forced leadership, but with the kind of steady human energy that quietly shifts the entire room. Her presence wasn't loud, it was consistent. She showed up early, checked in without being asked, cracked jokes that turned into inside lingo, and offered wisdom without ego. The result? A once fragmented roster began to cohere into something rare, a team that played like a family. Lexy Hull's evolution mirrored that transformation. Once seen as a utility player, Hull became one of the league's most dependable shooters, nailing threes at nearly 49% accuracy. But her breakout wasn't just about mechanics. It came from confidence, a belief cultivated by a locker room that made her feel seen, supported, and free to take her shot. That kind of belief can't be bought or taught. It has to be built, one genuine connection at a time. And while Caitlin's temporary absence due to injury would have derailed most young teams, Indiana didn't unravel. They tightened. Roles became clearer. Trust deepened. The chemistry didn't fade. It flourished. What looked like survival on the outside was actually transformation. The Fever weren't just holding on without their superstar. They were evolving because they had built something stronger than a one-player system. They had heart. One powerful moment told that story better than any press release. After a heartbreaking personal loss for Hull, Cunningham responded not with rehearsed sympathy, but with a rawness only real friendship can offer. Around the same time, despite her frustrations on the court, Caitlin made sure Hull knew she wasn't alone. That bond between the three, Clark, Hull, and Cunningham, sparked something bigger than basketball. It became a heartbeat that pulsed through the entire franchise. Fans noticed, and they responded. Social media turned the trio into legends, not because of celebrity, but because of authenticity. Fans dubbed them Tres Leches, a name that began as a playful nod, but quickly became something more. Artworks, highlight reels, memes, and even custom merch followed. Cunningham's Tres Leches shirt sold out in hours, not for the logo, but for what it represented: community, loyalty, and joy. Every high five, every shared glance, every silent nod during timeouts started to feel like rituals. You couldn't script the trust between them if you tried. But the ripple effect extended beyond their trio. Young players took note, veterans around the league did too. Free agents began circling Indianapolis, not just because of what the Fever were building on the court, but because of how they were building it. A place where you weren't just valued as a player, but as a person. Where wins were celebrated, yes, but humanity was prioritized. Their story is one of organic growth, not overnight success. It's what happens when teammates stop acting like colleagues and start living like sisters. It's in the subtle looks exchanged after a tough possession, the way Hull finds Clark without needing to scan the court, the trust Cunningham shows when letting a younger player take the final shot. That's not a strategy, that's soul. As the Indiana Fever continues their season, there's a momentum you can't measure in standings, a pulse that beats louder with every game. But what do you think truly transformed the Indiana Fever? Was it talent or the unshakable bond between Clark, Hull, and Cunningham? We'd like to hear your take. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.